Hey guys, welcome outdoors. Oh god, the down climb. A little while ago, I did release a video called Beginner's Guide to Outdoor Bouldering, but this video is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be comparing the differences between indoor and outdoor bouldering, and specifically the mindset that you might want to adopt before you start going outside. Because while going outside can be as easy as grabbing your shoes, your chalk, a friend, and a crash pad.
Where's your crash pad?
I forgot it. This is just a prop. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about, and probably the thing that you hear the most about climbing outside, is how hard it is. So let's talk a little bit about grade difficulty between indoors and outdoors. In an indoor gym, typically the lower graded climbs between V0 and V4 are going to be set a little bit easier than you'll see them outside. And this can also be true for the higher grades, but it is truly dependent on your gym. There's so many mosquitoes in front of me. In my gym especially, V0s typically follow the same pattern. They're comprised of either jugs or handlebars all the way up with very little variation, whereas outside, I've been on a couple of V0s that are a little bit easier, but I've also been on V0s that are challenging technically, and I've also been on some V0 highballs, which you would never see in a gym. Going outside, the grades are typically going to be a little bit harder than what you're used to seeing in the gym. As I just mentioned, the V0 highball that I went on, I think it's worth mentioning that there's a certain degree of fear factor when you're going outside. A lot of gyms that you'll see have legal limits to how high they can actually build their walls inside, but Mother Nature does not abide by those rules. As such, you'll be able to get on climbs that far exceed those legal limits. Another thing with the fear factor is the fact that you're not landing on your nice 3-foot cushy pads that your gym has. You're going to be falling onto a crash pad, which you absolutely need if you're climbing outside. And that also means that you're going to want to climb with other people who can spot you. Indoors, I feel like, is really accessible for the climber who doesn't have a lot of other climber friends. Personally, when I started climbing indoors, I didn't really have a lot of people who were around my level who I felt comfortable climbing with. Climbing indoors was a great way for me to build up my skill by myself, but outdoors, you really don't want to be doing that. You want to be climbing with a friend, with a group of people who are able to keep you safe and spot you. It's just good practice whenever you're outside to bring a buddy with you. Another thing that I quickly realized when I went outside is that it's not always obvious where you should put your feet specifically. Is he okay? He's okay. Handholds are a little bit easier. Oftentimes there will be chalk marks that indicate where you should put your hands, but your feet, total mystery to me. Indoors, it's a lot easier. They're like high contrast holds, pretty obvious where the route setter is intending your feet to go, even if they do want you to smear a little bit. But outdoors, your feet can be totally relegated to smearing the entire time. And that's okay because the rocks have a kind of grit to them that actually makes smearing your feet a little bit easier than it is on an indoor wall. And so something that you'll realize is that your feet will stick to the rock a lot better than they do inside. And so learning how to position your feet in a way that they don't blow or they don't cut is really important in outdoor climbing, but learning to trust your rubber is something that you will quickly learn outside and will become a lot easier once you do it a lot more with more practice. Speaking of rocks being gritty, something that I also realized was that my hands were getting a little hurty at the end of my sessions. So the rocks are really rough and do cut up your hands quite a bit more than they do inside. And so when I went to the buttermilks in Bishop for the first time, I actually ended up taping every single one of my little baby fingers because it just hurt so much. And I do know some of my friends who will bring ibuprofen and Advil to their climbs because they're anticipating a lot of inflammation in their fingertips. And so if that sounds like something you'd want to do, consider it. I also wanted to talk about money because it does cost money to climb inside because you do have to pay your monthly or annual or even daily fee to get access to the facilities, except outdoors, you don't really have to pay anything, except a couple of important things that I should mention. If you're climbing in a spot that's a little bit further away, you are going to need to pay for gas and obviously accommodations if you're staying somewhere for a weekend. Another thing is that you might have to purchase a national parks pass if you're climbing in a national park or an area that has a fee associated with it for a daily pass. Just research the area before you go to be absolutely sure. speaking of researching the area before you go, another reason why indoor climbing is so popular is because you can do it pretty much year-round. But outdoors, there is a very narrow window of time most of the time where you can climb comfortably and safely. What I mean by that is most people don't like to climb in the middle of summer. It's just a recipe for dehydration and sunburns. But you also don't want to climb, depending on the type of rock that you're climbing, a couple of days to even like a week or more after a rainfall. So this is especially true of sandstone and other rocks that are more brittle and breakable when they are damp. There are two last points that I actually got from the Vertical Thoughts podcast, and so I'll link it in the description, but I think it's like a chill, casual podcast. In this one episode, Liam and his buddies were talking about the differences between indoor and outdoor bouldering, and they had some pretty good points. One point that Liam made was that outdoor bouldering can be a little bit more rewarding, especially since there is a narrower window of time with which you can go after your projects, meaning that you're coming back to your project season after season to send them if they're a little bit harder, which means that when you finally do get that project that you've been working on for years, that you've been dreaming about in your sleep, doing the motion in your dreams, that can be incredibly rewarding. Inside, the problems are going to be completely reset within a month or two, and you're not going to have that long-lasting relationship with your white whale of a climb like you do outside. One last thing is that with the rise of indoor competition style sets, which tend to involve a lot more dynamic movement and parkour, there seems to be a kind of discrepancy between indoor and outdoor bouldering styles. However, there is really no shortage of bouldering dynos outside. Climbers love to find a good dyno, but you're not going to find the same type of like party trick, inverted weirdness, parkour style climbing.
Alright, now it's time to get more into the nitty-gritty of it all. So you probably already have the chalk and the shoes, but what about the crash pad and the spotter that I mentioned earlier? So the crash pad is easy. Either you buy one, borrow one from a friend, or rent one from a co-op. And if you really do your research, and you're feeling lucky, and feeling like you don't mind bumming off total strangers, and know you're going into a heavily trafficked area, it's okay to just ask to hop on a boulder problem that others are working on, where the crash pads are already set up. Since bouldering has gotten so much more popular, the crags are actually starting to look a lot like gyms, where the fall zone can be covered by an army of crash pads. Next, let's talk about the spotter. Especially if you're a beginner going outside, you do not want to go at it alone. Luckily for you, bouldering is one of the most social sports out there, and finding a crew of people to go with is pretty easy. There are a bunch of Facebook groups dedicated to this, and I'll just post some here for examples. It's also worth mentioning that I have also brought non-climber buddies along for the ride outside, and as long as they know how to spot you, there should be some cool stuff for them to hop on as well. And even if not, at least they're enjoying your company in nature. Alright, now let's talk about where you can climb outside. A big barrier to entry seems to be the fact that you're gonna have to drive hours to do something that you might not be good at first. What you can do is download the Mountain Project app and search your area. That's actually how I got here. While Martin and I were in Ojai, we decided to open up the Mountain Project app and saw that there were some boulders up there in those there hills. And while these didn't consist of world-class boulders, they were good enough for me to scramble on and practice on for a short while during the weekend without committing to an entire weekend-long climbing trip. What I would do is I would search around areas that you frequent and see if there are any sites that make sense to check out. If they're not heavily trafficked, the areas might be a little overgrown and inaccessible, so you definitely want to bring a buddy or two on your adventure. And if the boulders seem accessible with good, safe landings and they have easy routes on them, it might not be a bad idea to hit these areas up whenever you have the time and practice bouldering movement on outdoor rock before you drive across the country to some world-class boulders. This is not going to work in a lot of areas. Us Californians tend to be a little luckier than others, but you might be surprised to see what's developed in your area. If you do live next to some pretty well-developed boulders, then it is also worth checking out the guidebook and supporting the work that went into compiling all of that data. I thought I would sign off on this video by imparting one last little bit of encouragement on you all. Chances are, if you're going outside for the first time, you're going to be climbing a little bit lower than your maximum grade at a gym, and this is totally normal and okay. Even if you cannot swing a V0 yet, just ignore all the routes and make up your own problems. Scramble if you have to. Even for me nowadays, I still feel like V0 can be particularly toasty, and so for warm-up, sometimes I'll just just find a rock feature and then hang on it. Just make it your own experience. If you've made the trek all the way out to go bouldering outside, you should try and make every last bit of it worth it. Get as much out of those climbing shoes as you possibly can. A huge regret that I have regarding the first 2 to 3 times I went bouldering outside was how cranky I got after I got shut down by what I thought were lower grade problems. This is totally the wrong mindset to have. If I could go back and tell myself one thing, it would be to try as many V0s, as many low-grade problems as I possibly could, and to get as much out of my climbing shoes as possible by just doing traverses, making up my own problems, etc. So now that you fully understand the differences between indoor and outdoor bouldering and the mindset you might need to adopt before you go outside for the first time, I definitely recommend you watch my first video where I just go over like Bouldering Outside 101, pretty comprehensive, pretty proud of that video that I made, so I'll link that right here. I also compiled a playlist of all my outdoor bouldering related videos, vlogs, information, all of that, so you can find that over here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you in those videos, and until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye.